Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Rslash ProRevenge. In today's episode, take a pay cut and lose benefits, or be fired. Okay, have fun reworking your entire system OCL. Don't mess with the valets. If these are friends, who needs enemies? Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Take a pay cut and lose benefits, or be fired. Okay, have fun reworking your entire system OCL. I work as a logistical consultant and have done so for the past 7 years. Most of my work is short-term contracts to update/optimize logistical systems for manufacturers and delivery businesses. I do have a couple of long-term contracts with repeat clients, and this story is about one such client. I got a job offer 6 years ago with a friend who inherited his family's machine shop. His father is a brilliant man, but not business savvy in the slightest, and the entire business was teetering on bankruptcy. My main job there was optimizing the production method for both existing contracts and future contracts. This was my first long-term contract, but I had been doing similar work for a few years and had gotten a couple of patents for producing some intricate parts before getting this job. In the contract negotiation, I made sure that any patents developed in the course of my work would be retained completely by me. The contract term was 5 years before re-evaluating. It took a lot of time and work, but the company became rather successful. Especially considering the condition my friend inherited it. The 2020 happened, and after about a year of trying to stay afloat, my friend sold to some entrepreneur who wanted to get into the industry. In the months prior to the sale, the new boss was trying to familiarize himself with the business. Being in charge of logistics, I had given him a tour of the place and informed him of the patented methods used. This was happening right around the time my contract re-evaluation was supposed to happen, and I asked whether I'd be negotiating with him or the new boss. He realized I didn't want to be stuck in a contract. I would negotiate with him if he wasn't gonna be my boss, and he assured me that he'd make sure my new contract would be negotiated with the new boss. The new boss started restructuring and laying off most salaried employees and cutting benefits like vacation and sick time as soon as the acquisition went through. I was not a fan of this new boss since he, in addition to this, was an ES with zero experience and refused to acknowledge that fact. He did not understand what exactly my job was and thought it was unnecessary. I could tell he was just waiting for my contract negotiation. Fast forward about a month into the new regime and enter the **, though that was my negotiation. He was of the opinion that I was overpaid and inefficient. He all but said that I was unnecessary. My only options were to either essentially become a part-time contractor with an effective 70% cut to what I was making and none of my benefits, or be fired. When he gave me the ultimatum, I was beyond shocked. I immediately contacted my lawyer, and he told me the contract was absolutely insulting. Needless to say, I chose option 2. Over the course of my time there, I had filed 2 patents that were extensively used by the company. With shorter contracts, I typically negotiate for better royalty rate than benefits or salary, but since this business was both with my friend and supposed to be long-term, I opted for negotiating benefits. About a week after the negotiations were completed, I told the new boss we'd need to discuss royalties before my term was officially over. He was not amused and was dismissive. After enough pressing from me, we had a meeting with lawyers present. What's important to know is that one patent is extensively used in the production of an electrical device for the company's biggest client. The royalties deal written up by my lawyer was the standard one I use for most companies, which is more expensive than my previous contract. New boss was shocking and fuming, saying how this was completely ridiculous and bordering on extortion considering how much more expensive it would be, and how not being able to use the patent would mean he'd lose clients while shifting production methods. I told him that he had in total 6 months of time to figure out what it was that I did, and to familiarize himself with the company and the fact that I had told him when I gave him the tour that I was the patent holder. He also could have asked for a quote and my usual rates. The first meeting ended very abruptly after this, and 3 days later he came with an insulting counter offer where I'd be employed again, but with far less benefits than I originally had. I told him I don't want to work for him, and that he either pays my rate or change production methods. This would entail replacing a lot of tooling and equipment and retraining workers. He threatened to sue and got rather belligerent, so I told him I'd see him in court if that was the case, otherwise he knows my offer and has my contact info. He quickly realized that even in the unlikely event of the court deciding in his favor that he'd still lose a lot of money in legal fees. After the meeting, I told my lawyer to draft a cease and desist and have it ready for when the contract expires. New boss started looking for my replacement. He had not stopped production or even told the clients about it during this time period. The day after my term ended, I sent the cease and desist letter and production stopped. He lost most clients, most employees just jumped ship, and last week declared bankruptcy. Hope he learned his lesson. Never screw over the logistics guy. Some additions. I have talked with my lawyer further about this, and I'm planning on speaking with the large client whose parts rely on my patent to try and buy the business and all the assets. I am also planning on giving majority, if not entire ownership, to my friend who the business really belongs to. He is the man I respect most in this world and truly like a brother to me, not to mention the patents I made during my employment with him have been very profitable. I'd see if I have to twist his arm for him to accept it. He's the owner, and I should have forced him to accept my help before this had to happen. The guy who bought the business from my friend is a tech entrepreneur who thought that manufacturing was the easy part, the stereotypical ego that is the bane of machine ops and logisticians across the globe. Apparently he is a relatively successful and smart man in that industry, but his ego and greed got to him and, well, he's probably not going to continue in the manufacturing sector. While I do make a good amount from royalties from my patents, I do not typically get to retain ownership with most contracts. I prefer to use my patented methods anyways, since they are both proven to work and I have the experience to effectively and quickly implement it. However, I'd say 80 to 90% of my contracts are just about eliminating inefficiency in existing production/delivery lines. This situation was very unique and most of my contracts are 6 months to 18 months. Don't mess with the valets. For some backstory, I worked as a valet in a small coastal city in college, and the restaurants I worked for were very popular for both locals and tourists. We'd generally be busy year-round, but as the restaurants are both waterfront, spring, summer/early fall are our peak seasons per se. The downside to these restaurants is that parking can be a huge pain in the ass. Combined, the restaurants can seat around 400 people at any given time, and can usually turn over about 2,500 seats on a busy weekend, but the parking lot can only hold about 60 to 70 cars at a time, which isn't much at all. That's why I, the valet, am there. We have about 25 to 30 designated valet spots, used to have double that amount, but I digress, and are really good about utilizing all of them efficiently so we can park as many cars as possible, thus getting as many tips as possible. Being that the valet spots are kind of in a weird spot, but really close to the restaurants and our stand, and there aren't any signs that say valet only, we usually show up a bit early and comb the spots off so people know they aren't for self-parking. Now, most people see the cones and recognize those spots are pretty clearly not available, but some people are so dumb / such a **** whole s that they will move the cones and park in our spots anyways. Disclaimer: there is a parking garage for overflow parking, but people don't particularly like using it. People do this pretty regularly, and we're usually pretty cool about it. One of the valets will normally just walk up to them as they're parking and tell them that the spot is reserved for valet, and they'll usually comply. Obviously, this was not the case yesterday, or I wouldn't be writing this right now. While we were in full swing last night, some douchebag is not 100 feet from me moving a cone so he can try to sneakily take one of our spots. I was talking to a customer, so I wasn't able to immediately go tell him to not park there. After finishing up talking, I walked over to Douche as he was getting out of his car and immediately knew I had encountered this exact guy trying to do this **T before. After this encounter, I knew revenge was going to be necessary. Our conversation went as follows. Me, hey man, I'm sorry, but these spots are for valet only. That's why we have the cones set up. If you like to self-park, you can park in this main lot, pointing to full lot, or in the parking garage. Douche, but there's nowhere to park in that lot, and I don't want to park in the parking garage. You guys always do this sh*t to me. So if I valet I could just park here? That's bullsh*t, bro. I'm parking here whether you like it or not. I was pretty taken aback and basically just walked away, not wanting to get into a fight over a parking spot. I knew it was time this guy learned his lesson. Now, I don't have the authority to tow his car or give him a boot, and I wouldn't anyways because I'm not an A*** hole, but my power is in pure number of cars I have access to. Luckily, he did this at about 8 p.m. I contractually only have to be there until 10 p.m., at which time I can park the remaining cars in certain places, and then leave the keys with the bartenders inside. Most nights I would stay to get the tips, but tonight, I was dropping keys. Conveniently, Douche had parked in the area where we move cars to before we drop the keys. My plan, use the valeted cars to block Douche in, and then leave with him having no way of leaving until the cars around him left. There was one car that would be particularly important, the one directly in front of him. I had a special car for that spot. It was owned by a restaurant employee that I knew wouldn't be off until 2 a.m. perfect. I maneuvered all the cars around him in a way that didn't make me look like I was intentionally blocking him, but in a way that made it look like I had no other choice. Everything fell into place perfectly, and I could already feel a justice chub starting to form. I went inside to drop the keys and explain to the restaurant manager what happened and my revenge. She loves us and said she'd 100% have our backs, which I figured she would. I told her to text me and tell me how everything played out. This is the text I received last night at around 11 p.m. The guy just came up to me pissed. He said there was a car blocking him from leaving, and that it needed to be moved immediately so he could leave. I tried to explain that you guys have to put cars there before you leave, and that you even told him to not park there. I guess that made him mad, so he's starting raising his voice at me. Bar manager saw and told me that he had been drinking for a while, which I assumed from the beginning. I told him that I couldn't, for liability reasons, allow him to drive home since he had been drinking. He got really pissed because he lives in 40-minute drive away, but ended up taking an expensive Uber home. She told me she slipped in the argument that he was going to get another ride whether he liked it or not. I came. If these are friends, who needs enemies? Backstory. I was in a special college program for working adults who went to school at night. We had 4 classes a semester, in the same amount of time most people take 2, compressed in half. This means that most of the material that you learned you had to learn on your own, without any in-class instruction. During this time I had been paired in a group with this woman who I could not figure out why she was in our program because she was very lazy. I ended up doing most of her work when we had to do projects together, and pushed her a lot when we had to study. She was constantly stopping us from studying and doing other things. I didn't care for her much, I wouldn't say we were friends, but we were friendly. She barely squeaked by in this program to graduate while I was in the top 10% of my class. At one point I was at her place for her birthday, and I met an older gentleman there that was a friend of her mother. At that time we had exchanged numbers just as friends. He was Mr. Love and Light and Spirituality. It was all bullsh*t, I found out much later. Years go by and I got into a situation where I have lost a job and was several months in arrears on my rent before my landlords kicked me out. Sadly I got a job literally a week after that and could have gotten caught up, but now I had nowhere to live. I was staying at a motel with my cats. I reached out to this older gentleman that I needed a place to live, and it turns out that this ex-college friend's woman's mother had an extra bedroom to rent out. I asked the older gentleman how the ex-college friend would feel about that, and he said he didn't really care. He never liked her as she was so loud and lazy. I was worried to ask her in advance, because I wasn't sure how she would feel about it, and I need a place to get into immediately. I couldn't afford to hear no, and it wasn't really up to her, it was up to the mother. We have not been in touch since graduation. After I moved in, of course she found out. Instead of being a normal person, happy that she knew the person moving in with her mother, and that she was safe with me, she acted really sh*tty towards me. Then I realized she was allowing her mother to live in a roach-infested apartment, with mold in a closet, and her mother was falling down on a regular basis. Her mother needed to be in a home where she could be supervised. I did clean up the roaches, tossed her microwave, and gave her mine since hers was infested, and cleaned up the mold with my carpet cleaner. I removed her bed frame so that the mattresses were on the floor, and I could get her into bed easier when she would fall. At this point, I had to get out of there as soon as possible for my mental health, and so this woman could get the right kind of help. I had to stop paying rent for a month in order to do that. About that time I filed bankruptcy, so I included what I owed the mother in my bankruptcy filing. As sh*tty as my ex-college friend was to me for moving in with her mother, you can imagine how sh*tty she was when I stopped paying rent. She filed a lawsuit against me, and this is when it got funny. She was so convinced that she was going to win that she approached me about doing it on TV. When you file in small claims court, these TV programs will approach you to see if both parties want to transfer the case. I said no, and she was bummed because she really thought she was going to have her moment to shine on TV. We get to court and they require you to exchange documents with the bailiff and go into the hall to read them. I gave her my bankruptcy filing. She was very confused. She had no idea why I was giving this to her. She had no idea what was coming. The judge took one look at my paperwork and dismissed the case. You should have seen it, her face went bright red. She's an extremely pale, blonde-haired Swedish woman, so it was quite the look. I just sat there smugly looking at her. She had been so convinced that she was going to win. I hated her for not supporting me and getting my feet under me after everything I did for her in school to help her graduate. I moved out and got on with my life. Mr. Love and Light and Spirituality then tried to sue me again for the mother's money in a different court. When we exchanged documents, not only did I have the bankruptcy filing, apparently they didn't learn their lesson the first time, but I also had a retraining order against him for trying to rape me and destroy my work laptop after I had moved into my new home. He didn't show up to that court trial, and it was accepted by default, even though I would have gotten it on the merits, so he didn't know that it went through. He walked out before the trial began and the judge dismissed it. And he now has that restraining order on his record if he ever does it to someone else. 3 court trials with these A****s, and I treated her mother with nothing but love and kindness. I'm so glad to have them out of my life. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.